The lobby echoed with her scream. "You're fired. Get him out." Karen shrieked, jabbing her manicured finger at me like I was trash. A uniformed security guard hesitated. People stared. Phones were out. A receptionist covered her mouth. I stood there, heart pounding, silent. She didn't know who I was, but she was about to. It started at 9:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. I walked into the building like I always did, quietly, casually, blending in. I wore jeans, a tucked shirt, no tie. I didn't carry a briefcase, just a thin folder labeled Annual Property Check. I liked seeing the tenants without them knowing who I was. You learn more when people treat you like nobody. This building, 12 floors of glass, steel, and relentless ambition, was mine. I bought it 5 years ago, but you'd never know. The tenants dealt with a management company. I stayed invisible, on purpose. But that morning, someone decided to make me visible. She came storming out of the elevator before I even reached the lobby counter. Mid-50s, pearl earrings, clipboard in hand, red lipstick painted with warlike precision. She was marching like she owned the place. She didn't. She looked at me with disgust. "You lost." "No, ma'am," I replied. "You don't belong here." "What company are you with?" She cut me off. "Doesn't matter. You're loitering." "I'm actually." "Security," she barked. A guard approached, uneasy. He recognized me, but wasn't sure what to do. I gave him a small nod. Karen waved her badge like it was a royal decree. "This man is not authorized to be here. I'm head of site compliance, and I'm terminating his access effective immediately." I just stood there stunned. "I've already called HR. If you work in this building, you don't anymore," she snapped. "We can't have unverified people walking around. You're a liability." I glanced around. Tenants were frozen at their desks. A woman filming with her phone whispered, "Oh my God." "Ma'am," I said calmly. "I don't think you understand. You're done here," she hissed. "Leave, or I'll have you physically removed." The guard looked to me again. I smiled slightly. "It's okay." I walked out, slowly. My hands shook, but not from anger. From disbelief. She humiliated me. In my own building. I walked past the tinted doors, then circled around to the side entrance where the owner's elevator was. The keycard still worked. Of course it did. By the time I reached the 12th floor, I had already texted my legal advisor. "She just fired me," I typed. "I think it's time." I opened the folder in my hand and stared at the papers. Original purchase contract, renovation permits, tax records, title. It was all there. I sat down at the long table in the private conference room overlooking the city. Below, Karen was probably celebrating, telling someone how she handled a threat in the lobby. She didn't know the only real threat was her own ego. She didn't know the man she kicked out signs her rent check every month. I watched the live feed from the lobby on the monitor. She was still there, lecturing a janitor now. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to no one, "So this is how it begins." And I meant it. Because this wasn't about revenge. This was about reminding someone who they were speaking to. I picked up the phone and dialed the property board. "Yeah," I said calmly. "Schedule a compliance review. Full audit. Starting today." They agreed immediately. The building was mine, and I wasn't walking away this time. I hadn't always been the man in the corner office. There was a time when I used to sit on the very steps outside that building, eating dollar store ramen and watching the suited men and women rush past me. I'd wipe my hands on my jeans, pretending I had somewhere to be. I didn't. Back then, I was just another kid with a backpack and a busted laptop. My father had passed away the year before. My mom worked 2 jobs. I wanted more, not out of greed, but survival. So I built it. Not all at once. First came the lawn care gigs. Then came late nights, no weekends, just hustle. My company mowed grass before sunrise, cleaned gutters after sundown. I slept in the van, saved every dollar. 10 years later, I owned the landscaping firm that handled 50 buildings, including the one Karen tried to throw me out of. When the opportunity came to buy that building, I didn't blink. I poured everything into it. Renovated every floor, installed solar, created subsidized lease options for small businesses. I didn't want to be a landlord. I wanted to be a foundation, but I never show my face. I didn't like titles. I stayed behind the scenes, letting my management team handle everything. I liked it that way. Until now. Karen. Karen was new. She wasn't even from the city. She'd moved here 6 months ago from somewhere out east, armed with a framed degree and a trail of LinkedIn posts bragging about streamlining compliance policies. She talked big, but she didn't do small. She was handed partial oversight by the HOA, just enough to make noise, not enough to change policy. But she acted like she ran the whole structure. Sent memos without approval. Rearranged public space furniture. Posted signs on restroom doors saying, "Tenants only. No guests," as if the cafe on the first floor wasn't open to the public. Tenants started emailing complaints. A woman who ran a design firm on the third floor said Karen yelled at her in turn for using the front entrance. A disabled veteran who founded a nonprofit was told he was blocking walkways with his mobility scooter. I stayed quiet, collected it all, documented. I watched through security feeds as she berated the janitor after I left the lobby. His name was Thomas. Been there since the building opened. She told him to stop standing around. He was checking the air filter, something he did every day at that exact hour. That night, I walked the building. Not in a suit, not with an entourage, just me and a clipboard. I visited every floor, talked to tenants, asked them what they loved, what they hated. I didn't mention Karen. I didn't need to. The next morning, I met with the internal management board. 3 people. Quiet, practical. They had questions. "Is this retaliation?" they asked. "No," I said. "This is stewardship." They nodded. By noon, I had launched a full review of on-site operations. It wasn't flashy. No big announcement. Just a quiet shift. Karen didn't notice. She was too busy sending out another memo, this time demanding all mailroom packages be inspected before being stored in the tenant bins. I watched the email come through on my admin account. Then watched tenants groan. A friend of mine, a retired teacher who rented a small studio space, texted me, "Is it true we can't bring clients into the conference room now?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had something better. By 4 p.m., the legal team had assembled a package: tenant complaints, staff statements, video evidence, and something else. Her resume. My PI confirmed it. She had lied. The corporate compliance role she claimed to hold for 6 years didn't exist. The company folded 10 years ago. Her executive director title, self-given at a failed consultancy. She forged it all. And now she was making rules in my house. I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. I looked out over the city from the top floor balcony and thought about my father. About how hard he worked for everything he had. About what he'd say now. I smiled. "Let's clean house," I whispered. The next day would begin the audit. And Karen wouldn't even see it coming. It didn't take long for things to unravel. 3 days after the audit quietly launched, the tension inside the building started boiling. Tenants whispered in break rooms. Emails flew behind locked screens. And Karen, she strutted through the halls like she was being filmed for some corporate reality show. She wore a whistle. An actual whistle. Said it was symbolic authority. She blew it on a college intern for eating in the stairwell. Issued a written warning to a man who brought his therapy dog to the office, even though it was legally permitted. Then she placed a notice outside the shared kitchenette. Appliance use limited to active leaseholders only. She was spiraling. But in her mind, she was climbing. One afternoon, I watched from the security feed as she interrogated a woman with 2 children. They were waiting by the front desk, quietly coloring. Their mother, a freelance accountant, had brought them in after school for an hour so she could meet a client. Karen leaned down, eye level with the kids, and snapped, "This is not a playground." The mother tried to speak, but Karen raised her hand like a traffic cop. "You'll be receiving a conduct infraction. Children are not permitted in professional spaces without advance notice." The woman held back tears. Her kids just looked confused. I paused the feed, closed my laptop. There's a moment where observation turns into obligation. This was it. By the time Karen sent out a building-wide memo declaring that all elevator rides must be for essential transit only, my inbox was full. Tenants were furious, but they were scared to speak out. She had made it clear that complaints could result in lease reconsideration. She was using fear, and fear makes people small. Not today. I walked into the building at 10 a.m., no folder this time. I passed her in the hallway. She didn't recognize me. Or maybe she did, but assumed she had buried me. She was wrong. I nodded. She looked past me like I wasn't there. I kept walking, up to the 12th floor. The conference room already had its blinds drawn. My team was ready. Legal, compliance, and a private investigator sitting silently, tapping a pen against the polished wood table. The board of directors dialed in via secure line. We reviewed everything. 32 documented incidents, 4 HR reports, 3 tenant lease violations initiated without authority, 1 formal ADA complaint. En the résumé, she had claimed oversight of multiple Fortune 500 branches. In reality, she was once a temporary office assistant for a now-defunct insurance firm. The lies weren't just embarrassing. They were actionable. We filed 2 official notices, one for misrepresentation of authority, the other for administrative abuse. Then we scheduled something she couldn't spin, a mandatory HOA emergency session. All tenant representatives invited. All complaints to be aired live. The meeting would be in 3 days. We'd give her time to prepare. Let her think it was still a game. Let her whistle a little longer. And then take the floor from under her. That evening, I took the long route home. Drove by the spot where I used to park my van. The alley where I kept a lockbox of old business cards. The storefront where I dreamed of having an office. I remembered the cold. The hunger. The silence of being ignored. It's easy to forget how it feels. But I hadn't. That's why I built spaces for people trying to build something themselves. People like the single mom, the veteran. Then turn with a sandwich in the stairwell. Karen thought this building was her podium. She never realized it was my home. And in 3 days, I was going to take it back in front of everyone. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. By 8:40, the building's main conference room was already full. Tenants lined the walls. Small business owners, freelancers, accountants, artists, coders, people who had poured their savings, sweat, and weekends into building something inside these walls. I arrived quietly, as always. No entourage, just a single envelope tucked inside my jacket. Karen entered 5 minutes later, heels clicking like punctuation marks, arms folded, lips pressed into a confident smirk. She didn't acknowledge anyone. Not the elderly man in the corner with a cane. Not the 2 young women with therapy notebooks on their laps. She stood at the head of the table like it belonged to her. Then she spoke. "I understand there's been some confusion," she said, voice loud, rehearsed. "Let me begin by stating clearly that all actions taken under my leadership were to protect this facility, its integrity, and the well-being of its tenants." No one clapped. She glanced around, slightly thrown off, then pressed forward. "I have maintained this building at a higher standard than ever before. Compliance is not optional. Security is not a suggestion. We've been too lenient in the past, allowing anyone to wander in, bring pets, children, non-paying guests." A voice cut through there. "Those aren't guests. They're family." All heads turned. It was Rosa, the cafe owner on the first floor. 63 years old. She'd been renting that space since before I bought the building. Karen blinked. "This is not an open floor discussion." I stepped forward. "It is now." Karen spun around. Her eyes finally registered me. The confusion came first, then panic, then something worse, realization. I walked to the center of the room and placed the envelope on the table. Slowly, I opened it and spread the contents. A certified deed, original title transfer, tax certifications, maintenance contracts, my name. The room went silent. I turned to face her. "You fire the man who owns this building in front of a dozen witnesses," I said, then harassed his tenants, intimidated his staff, lied about your background, and enforced rules that were neither voted on nor approved. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came. I continued. 3 formal complaints have been filed to the city regarding ADA violations. 2 against her name, personally. I held up the forged resume, has already been sent to the State Ethics Commission. She finally found her voice. This is, this is a smear job. You're just trying to undermine my authority. You don't have authority, I said calmly. You never did. You assumed it. And worse, you abused it. Her face twisted. You think owning this place makes you untouchable? That you can walk in here and just embarrass me? I didn't answer. But the tenants did. One by one they stood. Not shouting. Not angry. Just done. The single mother. The veteran. The janitor. Even the intern from the stairwell. Karen backed away like the room itself was shrinking in on her. This is illegal, she spat. You can't just humiliate someone like this. I finally looked her in the eyes. You're not being humiliated, I said. You're being revealed. She lunged for the papers, tried to grab the resume, rip it, destroy it, but two members of security stepped in. Not to protect me, to stop her. The room gasped. Karen was escorted out, still shouting, still refusing. I didn't speak. I let the silence speak for me. The meeting resumed. Tenants laughed again. Someone opened donuts. Rosa passed around coffee. And just like that, the building breathed. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because the real consequences? Those were still on their way. 2 days after the meeting, the letter arrived. It was from the city's business ethics office. Thick envelope. Gold seal. Inside was confirmation. Karen's certifications were officially suspended pending investigation. Her forged resume had triggered a deeper probe. Turns out she'd pulled similar stunts in 3 different states. One even involved a nursing facility she tried to modernize with cost-cutting that nearly shut them down. Now she was on a blacklist. Permanently. But that wasn't the part that stayed with me. What stayed with me was the letter Rosa left at my desk that same morning. It was handwritten. Asterisk, you didn't just stand up for us. You reminded us we're allowed to stand up for ourselves. This building feels safe again. You brought that back. Asterisk. I read it twice, then tucked it into the top drawer of my desk. I didn't need awards. I didn't need headlines. That letter was everything. We renovated the lobby the following week. Not because it was damaged, but because I wanted it to feel new again. Fresh start. We replaced the sterile gray with warm woods, added more plants, got rid of the security desk that felt like a checkpoint and replaced it with a welcome table. The janitor, Thomas, was promoted to facilities manager. He cried when we gave him his own office. He told me he hadn't had a desk with his name on it since high school. Then her name was Layla. Turns out she was studying nonprofit management and had dreams of opening a youth center. I offered her a paid position helping manage community programming in the building. Her face lit up like sunrise. As for Karen, the day she was arrested, I wasn't even in the office. She had returned to the property a week later, screaming in the parking lot. Security called the police. She tried to flee, claimed she was being silenced by corporate overlords. Body cam footage showed the truth. Wild eyes, manic rambling, trying to barge back into the building she once ruled. She was charged with trespassing and obstruction. I watched the footage later that night, not to gloat, not for revenge, but to remember. Because people like her don't just show up in uniforms. Sometimes they wear blazers, carry clipboards, smile while they take power away from people who don't even realize they're losing it. But this time, we saw it, we stopped it, and we rebuilt. The building is different now, louder, brighter. There's music from Rosa's Cafe in the mornings, kids coloring at tables, tenants collaborating between floors, a mural in the main hallway that reads, "This place is yours." Sometimes I sit in the same chair where Karen fired me. I watch people walk by, laughing, talking free. And I remember that moment. Her finger in my face. Her voice, sharp like glass. Leave. No, you don't belong here. But I did. I always did. Not because I owned the building, but because I never stopped building. And now, everyone inside these walls gets to build too. That's the legacy. Not a nameplate. Not a title. A place where nobody gets to make you feel small. Not ever again.